to that. Okay. Greetings. A couple of things to cover just at the beginning. Hi, I hope you're all talking about TeX. A couple of things to cover at the beginning. Some people have said, "What about the guest accounts that they have for this week? When are they going to disappear?" Well, you know, I guess they won't stay open forever. But I would appreciate if you just write me a note saying how long you would like them to. If you want it after Friday. Say about how many days and why you'd like to have it after, because so far we aren't over our allocation, but the disk space is tight. This morning when I logged in, there was only 100 blocks left, and so that's this goes up and down all the time, but we can't provide free access to anyone who wants it just because they sat in on this class, I guess. But the purpose of the class was to get you started on it. After which, if you like it, then you have to either pay or wait for the Canon machines to come to you to the other parts of the campus, I'm afraid. Now let's see. Another thing is that when I logged in the computer this morning, it said that it was scheduled to go down tonight at 5 o'clock for some software development. So. Now that sometimes they forget about it and don't come in, but since I had asked them to try to avoid all downtime this week, but maybe they had to at least do once. 5 o'clock is usually the time that's down, so maybe once out of 5 days they had to do it. So I'm afraid that tonight from 5 to 8 o'clock the machine is scheduled not to be running. So let me see. Do I have any good news? Okay. Now, for tomorrow, I would like to respond to the stumbling blocks that you people are having personally, and so I would appreciate it very much if you would either talk to me after class today or send a note of some kind to my secretary or to me at least an hour before tomorrow's class, so that I have time to look at the problems that people are actually having. I want to plan all tomorrow's class based on the problems, starting with the most easily answered problems and the most elementary ones, and then going on to the if nobody is really stuck on very easy things, and everyone wants to hear about how do you write output routines? Well, we'll talk about how to write output routines, or alignments or something. But if there's something, don't be embarrassed to say that you're having trouble with something. That's the purpose of this course, is to have you surmount any hurdle that appears to be there. So let me know either right after class today or sometime anyway before tomorrow, so that I can plan tomorrow's lecture to get everybody over the hump. Let's hope. Today I wanted to talk about, well, it's a little bit of continuation of what we said yesterday, what it means when TeX says nasty things to you, and why these things seem reasonable to the computer, to responses. And also I wanted to talk a little bit about how you can get TeX to do slightly different things that you might be interested in. Okay, let's see. So where was I yesterday? I was beginning to show something about overfull boxes, and that's one of the main things I want to talk about. How many of you have gotten a message saying some box was overfull? Oh, how many of you have not? Okay, so only a few people raise hands. Okay, overfull boxes is a strange thing that TeX does that no other system does, and I'm going to try to defend it if I can today. Now let me see, what else can I say? It's just a brief review of what we did yesterday, except, well, let's see, I think this was on here. Notice here was a case. I was looking ahead in someone's someone's file, and there was a different kind of error in that one than we saw yesterday. The first one here. You can't do that in math mode, and the thing that you couldn't do was equation number. Now, I think you noticed that I did use equation number, but that was display math mode. So you can't do an equation number in math mode. It's only for display math mode. Well, now if you get to look at this error message, this is one of these 6-line ones. This is an argument to something, and you don't even know what the thing is. But here we see what we're actually TeX has read up to page 2, line 19, and it's read up until the double dollar sign. So it should be. It looks like it's in display math mode in a way, doesn't it? But actually now, looking at this, I see there's a carriage return there. So what this is probably is an example of EQ align. Which is the subroutine in the control sequence in BASIC that's used to line up things. So I'll make a quick review of EQ align here. EQ align is what you type if you want to get like equal signs align. Like you can say A, and then you type a tab mark, which is this. On the keyboard, it's the same key as the asterisk, but top asterisk. And then you type equals some messy formula like square root of whatever, okay? And then you say \CR at the end of the first equation. And then to line up the second one, you might, like this equation might even end with a comma. And then the second one, you could say B sub I, and then you give your tab mark, and then you would say equals, and then you have some other formula, /CR, and then maybe there will be a third line which has nothing to the left of the equal sign, and this you might say less than or equal to 1 over n or something, whatever you've got here, period, and then another /CR, and a right brace. Now, this would come out looking like this: A equals square root of whatever on the first line. Then B sub I equals, and then there's your next line here, less than or equal 1 over n. Period. And this would all be centered finally. So the text would. Now, this isn't a real example. I'm just making it up now. But you've seen this a lot of times, where you have a series of equations, and you want to have all the things aligned. And these tab marks here are the things that tell TeX where to what position to line up. It comes before the relation. So that's fine, except that this person. Now, this is all explained in the manual. Well, let me see. Can I borrow the manual for a sec? Okay, EQ align. I have to find it in the index. And it's on page 92 to 96 is all about that. Okay, so it appears in the manual and gives you some examples of EQ align. And here was one of the examples in the book that worked out. The first one it did. So there was several things on the left of the equal sign here and on the right. Okay, so it lines everything up and pushes everything to the right on the left part sides, and the right hand sides move to the left. And then here is an example with an equation number, in fact, but after the EQ align. Then it had an equation number, and that equation number gets centered with respect to the two lined equations. It's not on the bottom line of the two there. See? Now, sometimes though you've got to have alignment, and also maybe the first line is numbered, or the second line is numbered, or both lines are numbered. Okay. Well, then there's this other thing which is explained at the bottom of the page: EQ align with optional numbers, and this one is the thing to use in that case, and there you put another tab mark if there's a number on that line. Instead of just saying /CR, you put another one of these funny-looking tab marks. So here was a tab before the equals, and here's a tab before the equation number 29. Okay. Or if I had done it for the earlier equation, and I wanted to just number the second equation, then I would give no number for the first line, and I give a number for the second line. This EQ align number always puts the equation number at the right. Those people who like a style that does it at the left, there's help coming in other macro packages, but not in BASIC. BASIC does not have that. BASIC is very basic. It doesn't have all the bells and whistles that people can think of. All right, so now the cure then for the person who had this problem of EQ number, trying to put it in the middle of the EQ align before a carriage return, it doesn't go. It can't do that in math mode. It would have to go after, but here in fact it looks like it's complaining about equation number 1, and I can see equation number 2 is in there. Now TeX has actually not seen the error until it got to the end of the whole EQ align, because it first chews up the entire argument to EQ align, the entire thing in brackets, in braces after EQ align, and feeds that to the EQ align control sequence. So it won't catch the error immediately, because the EQ align control sequence doesn't start to work on it until after the whole thing has been done. So now the next one, equation number 2, also then was considered to be an error, the same page 2, line 19 is the source. And then the problem occurs also on line 26 when with the equations 4 and 5. Okay. So that's something to keep in mind, and the difference between aligning equations with and without numbers, and the other macro packages that go beyond BASIC will give you more options like this, for more kinds of things that can happen. Now the difference, you might say, well, why not just have EQ align number and not EQ align at all? Because you could always you could always just use EQ align number without putting a number in there, not your third parameter. Well, then you wouldn't have the chance to get this number here centered the way it was. Okay. So EQ align without the number makes a box that can be used in a formula just like anything else. So you can have an EQ align of something, and then you can continue a formula and say quad another EQ align and get two sets of aligned equations in the same formula. So you could say EQ align of something, and you could get A equals something and B equals something, and then you give another EQ align that would give you a C equals and D equals to the right of that. If you said an EQ align, finish that one, and then another EQ align in the same formula. EQ align number, you can't do that. EQ align number makes something of the whole. That's prepackaged so that the result of it is the width of an entire line, because it's got to be ready to put that equation and number here. EQ align itself without the number just makes the box as big as it's necessary. So this was the result of the first EQ align. This would be the result of a second EQ align. Now this isn't going to. Now both of these are centered with respect to each other. So if they aren't exactly the same size, it might look a little funny. Like if suppose C starts out with a big integral sign, and all these other formulas are very small, like A equals 0, B equals 1. C starts with a big integral sign. Well, then this box is going to look bigger, and in order to center it, it's going to move this box up a little bit, and so that wouldn't work very well. So I'm sorry, but EQ align doesn't do everything, nor will any one control sequence do everything that you could ever possibly expect it to do. So EQ align will build a box for the size of these things, but if one is larger than the other, that they'll be centered with respect to each other. And general alignments we could talk about tomorrow if there's enough interest. But EQ align itself is just an abbreviation for something that you could type. A bunch of, you would say V box of H align of something or other, and you could learn how to type those lower level things, V box of H align yourself, and make those alignments if you want some really special effect. What I've what I found was, though, that EQ-align and EQ-align number were able to handle, the first 200 pages of mathematics that I personally had to typeset, and that sample that I chose influenced the way I defined BASIC. I just took everything, I made BASIC do everything that I needed to do in 200 pages of pretty varied stuff, but still it wasn't it didn't vary as much as the difference between applied physics and statistics or something like that, the way people would want to use TeX. So other sets of formats besides BASIC will certainly be made up. Okay. Now, any questions on that? The next thing I don't know why this happened. Undefined control sequence \3. It might have been meaning to say 2/3, and the typist was just very used to hitting the \/ key instead of the / key by now, because here's this quad right in front of it. So maybe it just meant 2/3. But so \3, undefined control sequence is it's certainly not defined. It hasn't been defined yet. On the other hand, these control sequences \0, \1, and so up to \9. Well, let's see. I have defined \9, I guess, in Appendix E, but not in BASIC. And the intent is in most macro packages to leave those control sequences undefined, so that no matter what macro package you have, then these are going to be handy ones for you to make up for an abbreviation for something that you can see that you're going to be typing 10 times. So you could define \3 to be a set of 20 characters that you don't want to have to type over and over again, and just say \3 each time instead. So these would be convenient to remember, that all of those control sequences are reusable for you and don't have a special meaning in a macro package. Now, here's an undefined control sequence. No. You can see what the intent of that one was, right? I'm sorry that control sequences don't jump. Well, no, I'm not sorry, because otherwise you couldn't do very much with them, with control sequences, if they were allowed to jump spaces. But that's why we have these funny long control sequences with all words mixing together. Noindent, EQ-align, it's not always pronounceable, but in order to get it as a control sequence, we tend to run into long words. Now, you know what's going to happen if you just press carriage return on after this error. What's going to happen? Please use the microphone.
Indent will be included in the text as it prints out.
Indent will be included in the text as a word. Not only that, it'll be indented, right? Okay. So it'll say indent. There'll be a blank space, and then it'll say indent. Okay. Right. Okay. Now, what if you wanted to correct that as you were going through, just so that wouldn't appear in your output? Maybe you'd like to see it in the output, because that'll be a good reminder that you got to correct this afterwards. But suppose you wanted to, this was the only mistake in your file, and you wanted to get the output right away and get it over with. How could you correct this without restarting TeX? Susan?
Here. I can't remember how to do the delete, but I would delete 6 characters.
Okay. Yeah, you delete 6 by typing a 6.
Okay.
You type a 6 to get rid of the INDENT,
and then
it would stop again and give you another chance.
And then I'd insert the /no indent.
Yeah, then you type an I and then /no indent with no space, and then you'd be on your merry way. Okay, that's a review of yesterday, insert and delete. Okay, now I wanted to talk about overfull boxes, of course. Question? I can't see. Oh, Doris?
And a symbol.
How do I get equal line what? And a symbol before the equation? explain, excuse me? How do you get this symbol, the tab mark? Oh, okay. Well, this is on the. It's possible that on score they have defined this to be some other symbol. At sale, it's defined to be a character that's on the same key as the asterisk, which is right up in upper right-hand corner of the screen. Jake? Yes. Okay.
On score, it's Control V.
Control V?
Yeah.
Okay, Control V on score for that tab mark.
Question?
Oh yeah, I remember now.
Question?
Question? Yes.
With respect to that last example with the no indent,
Yes.
is the space considered a character that hasn't been read or has been read?
The space following a control sequence is always ignored.
So if you put inserted just /no, then it would get the desired effect.
The space after the T of no indent has not been read because you only deleted 6 characters. But then when you reinsert a control sequence, that space will be ignored because it follows a control sequence.
The space between the no.
The space between the no and the indent
Right.
would be ignored in any event because after a control sequence, spaces are neglected. So even if it were, so it must have been read in order to break it. But it's right. It's hard to tell whether it was on the first line or the second line when it's a space. Yeah, that's right. You can't see the spaces there. Perhaps our later implementation of TeX will have some way to display a visible symbol that's supposed to mean a space, so that you could tell. Sometimes your file contains not a space but a tab mark, and then it just shows as several spaces on the screen. TeX treats those as if they were spaces. Similarly, if you give 4 spaces in a carriage return, it's very hard to see that those 4 spaces are in the line. So that's why the rules of TeX have been set up so that unless you do something strange that we're going to talk about next week, that when you want this feature, usually spaces at the end of a line before a carriage return, spaces at the beginning of a line, or tab marks at the beginning of the next line, all have exactly the same effect to TeX, which is as if there was only one space. This is so that these visual puns don't interfere with what the actual behavior of TeX is, because otherwise you stare at the file and you never see that it was doing something strange only because there was a space before the carriage return. Yeah. So the rules have been intentionally made so that this wouldn't that kind of problem would be minimized. Okay. Now I want to talk about overfull boxes, and here's a little episode. This is one of the students of the class who was most ambitious, perhaps. I think she went to my secretary and said, "What was the most complicated paper Knuth ever wrote?" And Phyllis gave her a reprint of this particular one, and she said, "Okay, that will be her project for the week." And she started out, and it's a paper called Notes on Generalized Dedekind Sums, and she started to type it, well, we used this as one of the examples yesterday, but then we didn't talk about the next thing where it started to say overfull box 0.59442y. And what it meant, what this overfull box usually means is that TeX was trying to typeset a paragraph and it didn't find a good way to break the lines. And so as a result, and I'll tell you why in a minute, it has set one line too long. Instead of it had a choice. It could either set one line too spacey, or it could set one line too long. And in both cases, you'd like to know about it. You'd like to have some kind of a message saying that there's something unusual about this paragraph, unless you don't care about a line that's too spacey. In which case you would prefer to have a line that's too spacey and not even be told. Okay, now you can get all those effects from TeX, but if you don't want very spacey lines, then then it'll give you an error message of one sort or another. It would either have to set a line to spacing and say, watch out, there's a line over there that really violates your constraint on spaces, but otherwise the paragraph at least doesn't have anything sticking out. The alternative would be to also have the bad line sticking out and give an error message. Now the philosophy that TeX has is, since there's an error, there was not an error message, a warning message. This is not an error. You don't have it just goes on your terminal, but it doesn't. It's not really like an error. It doesn't stop you and ask you to do anything. It just tells you this happened. Now the TeX takes the philosophy that you're going to want to correct it anyway, since your tolerance on wide spaces said that this wasn't any good. And so by putting the overflow line, you'll be able to look at the line and see how much is going to fit on that line. So what it does is it squeezes that line together as much as it can, and you'll see if it sticks out. Now what actual output was here, the first line was sticking out a little bit. That first Riemanns, it didn't fit. Okay. Now, how did I know that it was that line? It doesn't show too well here, And it said here it was just, less than a point over, and a point is 72nd of an inch, a little less even. So, this is rather small potatoes here, but it's over full. And in fact, you don't even get this message if it's less than 1/10 of a point. I did know it was that line because I could look at this strange stuff afterwards here with these dots in front of it, and that was telling me what the box was that got too wide. Now, maybe somebody will implement TeX a different way sometime so that these overflow box messages are a little easier to read. But what this is really a printout of what the overflow box looks like to TeX at its funny machine-oriented level, and it's a little bit interesting anyway if you wonder what's going on inside of this strange program. As I said yesterday, the goals of TeX are to build boxes, and they make them either horizontally or vertically. And this is a box that was overfull, but it was an H box. Now the contents of the H box are listed down below with dots in front of it, and the first thing in that H box was another H box, and then came a character from font A, a W, capital W, and then came an H, an E, and an N. So if you learn how to read this way, that's when, okay? Not only that, but this H box here is in front of the when. Now let me explain that to you, because actually if you start to understand the lowest level of TeX, some of the other things all of a sudden come in clear, even though you don't have to think about the low level all the time. Now, what is these other strange things? Well, the first, it gives the height of the box, the depth of the box, and the width of the box. So here's a box this is all in points. So this is a box that's 6.9 points high, and that's above the baseline, and this is about 2 points below the baseline, and then it's about 361 points wide. And that's wider than it should be, actually. It should have been smaller. And then the glue set -1 means that everything has been shrunk as much as possible. Glue set is 0 means everything is its normal width. Glue set is positive means everything is stretched a little bit proportional to the amount of glue set. And glue set -1 means that this box, all the spaces in the line, the glue, have been compressed as much as possible. The next H box doesn't have anything in it. It doesn't have any height, it doesn't have any depth. It's just 20 units wide. This is the indent at the beginning of a paragraph. This is a 20-point indent that you get at the beginning of a paragraph was a box that was just invisible, doesn't have anything in it, but it was 20 points wide. So that was 2 M's of indent at the beginning of the paragraph, followed by the word when. So when you get an overflow box message, you scan down and you see what's in the box, and you can usually use that to figure out the beginning of the line. In case you can't see the line sticking out, at least I would know that it's started out with an indentation and the word when. And so then I could find it okay. But there's nothing printed on the page saying where the overflow box was. The reason is that TeX is pretty much, at this point, it doesn't even know where it's going to go on the page yet, because the box is going to be passed to other people, other parts of TeX before it gets done. And it doesn't know where it came from in the source anymore. That's all been your original input has all been massaged into some horizontal list and then broken into pages and so on. So all TeX can really do is say that it's had to make an overflow box somewhere and can't really very easily remember where it came from in the source file. I could have built in extra things in TeX that would remember this, but it hasn't turned out to be necessary yet. Now, so going back here then, that was how I found it. I could see an indentation of 20 points and then the word when, and that must be the line that there weren't any others on that, okay? Now we go through this little example a little bit further, and here the strategy in this case was after the first error message, the strategy here was to hit line feed instead of carriage return. Now, line feed says flash all the other error messages. Don't even stop for anything, because you sort of say there's going to be lots of errors. Just let me see them all and dump them all at me. So on these next error messages that come, there isn't even a place for a response. There's no up arrow here saying do something to it, because the line feed had been hidden and we're just going right through. And here's a missing left brace was inserted. See, it read H box 1, and the backslash H box, it turns out, has to always be followed by a left brace. And this is a rather complicated thing for a first exercise, but here it was, the H box type without a left brace after it. So TeX inserted a left brace there and said that it's going to read this one over again. And then it'll read the other things. And it's done all these things. But now it turns out that this one error has caused everything to get mixed up. And this is typical. You start working computer programs that process files, and very often your first error message is close to the truth. After that, if you get 10 more error messages, they might have nothing at all to do with any real errors, because the first error has screwed things up so royally that there's no way to get back in sync. In this particular case, the fact that the left brace was missing meant that the arguments to certain control sequences were completely wrong, because the way that left and right braces match up with each other is the whole clue to what gets passed to a control sequence, to what belongs to a center. If you said center line and you forgot the left brace, but it might bring in all kinds of weird parts of your text. So after this, just about everything is meaningless after this point, and so you get lots and lots of things. In fact, not only was there a missing one, then it turns out there's an extra missing left one, but there was an extra right one, and pretty soon there were some extra right ones, and then they probably find some missing right ones also. Everything will get screwed up pretty soon. And so this is an illustration then that don't be alarmed if you get 100 error messages. Only the first one might be a real error. The rest of them might just be because there was no obvious way to recover from the first error. We try the best to recover, but it's sometimes when it's a case of braces being mismatched or something, you have to go a while before you can get back in sync. Now, so this particular thing came through a lot of text, going through the whole text in completely crazy ways, until finally it generated an overflow box 7,297 points too wide. All right. So this is very glorious. So what it did was it made the rest of the paper into a mathematical formula with all kinds of beautiful alignments and everything, and so we did get that box out there. And finally, we were able to get the program to end. And what happened? Well, we sent it to the printer. This was to the XGP. And at the time, this was the first day the Dover wasn't working. And the printer got to that long formula and cut the page right there. You see the page is very short. Can you see this? It just gave up right there. And then, and there's a little, wild things here and there, and you could probably find, so we didn't get to see all this yards and yards of formula that are sticking out over full. Okay, now, so that's also what might happen. You might get overfull boxes because you have a very large formula or something that got put into a box. Well, now the story has a happy ending. That namely, after putting in that left brace and one or two other things, then the next time a whole page of output came through. And it was still a little bit, there was a problem with over here, not with the left brace in front of the over, so that the formulas, were, there should have been a left brace to say what goes over what. But you see, at least we're getting something that you can read and you can look at, and that's a lot more encouraging than over full box of 8,000 points. And even though a point is small, 8,000 points is large. You have to, okay. Now, and then the next, and then after, now it was easy to look at this and see and just patch a couple more things, and then came out something. Then the Dover started working also that afternoon, so everything was very, very lovely, and the output started coming out right. We got the J over K and everything. All these formulas are coming out nicely. Now, you might notice that the Dover output is a lot smaller than the XGP output. See that? The difference between the size of the type. And many of you might be wondering why that is, okay? And the same thing happens with the variant that you use over at the OR department. When on our low resolution devices, the XGP and the variant, we've been always magnifying the output by 30%. So when you say 1 inch, it actually comes out 1.3 inches. And your points on that, your 10-point type is really 13-point type. It's actually larger on those machines because they were just very hard to read at the small size. So everything was coming out at this artificial size, and that's why in one of the first examples I talked about true inches. I said 11 true inches in that handout because a true inch is not subject to the enlargement. If I had said 11 inches, I would have gotten 14 or so inches. Okay, so I said 11 true inches, and the same, and that was using the XGP. Now on the Dover, a point is a point, and so this is really 10-point type that you're seeing on this Dover output here. This is 13-point type, so coming out of the XGP. So if you look at the handout you got the second day, you'll see the Dover output, the calculus example was definitely smaller type than on the handout you got the first day, which was XGP output. All right, so there's this magnification that takes place on those low resolution devices. Our plan is that the Canon is high enough resolution that it will come out at 1:1, and so when you say 1 inch, it'll be 1 inch. On the other hand, there's use for magnification even on the Dover, and so it's possible now we've built in a way to get magnification when you're printing things on the Dover. This will soon be implemented also on other devices, but right now it's not working on the XGP or the variant. But if you are using the Dover, you can use a feature of magnification whenever the fonts are available at magnified sizes. Let me explain, first of all, what it looks like by doing something I did this morning. I haven't looked at these yet myself. I just picked them up on my way to class. But I took the calculus example that we typed in the other day, and I said magnify. Well, let's see. I got to get these in the right order. I think this will be okay. Yeah, I think I have it right. I said magnify by 30%. So this is exactly the same as your handout, as what you got in handout 2, but bigger. See, I don't have a copy of handout 2 with me. Does somebody have one? Let's just put them side by side. Okay. So this was the original Dover output, and this is the 30% larger Dover output. Now, I remember some mathematicians saying to me at first when they saw TeX that they were so jealous of French mathematicians who could have their journals come out with larger type and they could speak in big letters when they do their mathematics. So here's your chance also. If you like that, you can also get it on the Dover. And not only is it 30% larger than this one, but it's beautiful compared to the XUP. And it's exactly, I didn't have to do anything to the file except one thing. And that is, after I had said input basic, then on the next line, I said magnify 1300. Okay. Now, I have to caution the people at Xerox, if they're using T-basic, which gives them Times Roman text instead of other text, you can't use this feature. It only is working for the basic itself. But I say magnify 1300, and then everything. This is 1300 means 1.3 times. This is had to be an integer. We multiply it by 1,000. So 1300 means 1.3 times the true size. The other sizes you can use. So you can say 1,000, which does nothing. 1,100, which is 10%, 1,200, 1,300, 1,500, 2,000, and 3,000. These are the magnifications that the fonts that now exist for. So these 7 different magnifications are allowed for all the fonts in BASIC. And if you use another font besides one in BASIC, then you might not find it available at that magnification yet. But you should ask your local font wizard to see if if it's really important to you to get a font at that size. So this is 30% larger, I believe, and exactly the same source. Everything else was the same, except that the BASIC says that the margins are true inches, not inches, so that the margins don't get enlarged. So the line width doesn't get enlarged. So you see that some things the paragraphs are going to be broken differently. This paragraph is now 3 lines instead of 2 lines, and so on. You see. And of course the paper is 2 lines long. All right. So I was
Question.
Question.
Can you change the magnification within the text? Different things at different sizes.
It'll get very confused. Do it right at the very beginning. It'll even get confused if you try to magnify it at the later on or something like that, because it uses this magnification several parts. If you want to know exactly what the restrictions on magnification are, you can read about it in the file on sale. It's called errata.txt. This file I should tell you about anyway. This file is we had 100 copies lost in the mail between Rhode Island and here. We were going to give out copies of this file, but they didn't ever come. TeX, DEK is the file area. This file contains everything that's not in your manual, everything that's changed a little bit in TeX, and all corrections to the manual, typos, and anything like that are in this file. So you could say Dover errata.txt TeX and get a copy of that file if you want. And in fact, it'd probably be better to just print pages. What is it? Pages 6 to 9, because the first 5 pages you don't really need. They're errata to the very early manuals of TeX that are 4 years old. But anyway, this file contains information, and it has a write-up about magnification in it, I believe. Now, I played around with magnify. Another question, yes? No, sorry. You have to use FTP. Okay, I believe this was magnified at 1500. Let's see, can we see it's getting still larger? Now this is the kind of 1500, this is about what I could use for if I was making overhead projector slides. Let's see, we go back to the original. Carolyn, don't let me walk off with your hand out. But this was the original, this is really 10 points size type. This is 13.10 and this is 15 point. Now remember, when you're enlarging 30%, that's only in one dimension, and actually the area is going up by by 1.3 times 1.3, so it's going up 70% in area, but 30% in length. So you're going to, so the it's not just 10% can actually make a lot of difference in magnification.
Question.
Yes.
Wonder if you don't want to magnify the whole file, but just a certain
Just
portion.
one font. Yeah, it's possible just to magnify one font. There's a, again, this is not implemented at Score yet, but if you say like this, font A equals CMR 10 at 20 points, then you get, then font A will be a magnified 10-point font. It will actually be 20 points. So and this is available at those magnifications that are there. So I could take a 10-point font at 11, 12, 13, 15, something. I could also ask for CMR 7 at 21 points, because that would be magnified 3 times. But I can't ask for CMR 7 at 20 points because that's magnified 27 times. It's not one of the magnifications we have. I have a CMR 7 at 14 points. CMR 7 at whatever that is, 10.5 points. Okay. CMR, I can't ask. CMR 8 at 16 points would be a double of CMR, but that unfortunately that's not one of those in BASIC. So we haven't prepared CMR 8 at that magnification yet. But so the ones that you really know are the fonts that are in BASIC, and those are listed in Appendix B. CMR 10, CMR 7, for example, are fonts in BASIC. They're all available in 7 sizes. All the other fonts are available at least at 10% magnification. So CMR 8 you could ask for at 8.8 points.
Question?
Yeah, question?
Can you baseline skip?
Can I what?
Baseline skip.
Well, the baseline skip gets magnified with everything else. So this is photographically the same. This magnification is if everything was blown up by the same scale factor. So when you say 1 inch, it's going to come out 1.3 inches too, unless you ask for 1 true inch.
Except the measure.
Except the line measure, which was set in true inches. Yeah.
How do you get back out of that? If you've asked for a piece of type to be font equal.
Well, I can select font A by colon A. This selects font A. And now font A is just, I mean, I can use CMR 10 at different magnifications in the same document. If I select, but if I give each one, one will be called font A, one will be called font B.
Oh, I see. What you're saying, you're defining font A when you do that.
Yeah. This is another way to define, yeah. If the old way was just to say font A equals CMR 10, but then, and magnify would then apply to the final version. But if I say CMR 10 at 20 points, and then I tried to magnify also, then this would have to be magnified further. And as I said, at 20 true points. If I said at 20 true points, then it would be sorry. If I said at 20 true point, suppose I was also magnifying this document, and I said magnify 1500. And then I brought in font A at 20 points. It would actually be 30 points because of the magnification. You're saying yes, but I know it took me a while to get ramifications of this all straight. That's why errata.txt is your answer. It has a lucid explanation in case of doubt. Okay, now I got to show you the rest of these pictures. Yeah.
That really wasn't what I meant.
Oh.
Suppose you have a file that's paragraphs.
Yeah.
And you only want one of those paragraphs magnified.
Okay, then you should do something like this. Though you should really set in another font, and ask for that font to be magnified. Yeah, because magnification should be uniform throughout, because it's the amount of magnification has to be computed. For example, when the file is being sent out to the Dover. All the measurements have to be magnified by that amount in order to instruct the Dover what to do. Now let me show you what had happened. I think I made this magnification 2000, and I was getting a small sample of math typing. It's getting larger now. But boy, now, I mean, you can't see how how beautiful it is unless I hold it up to you, unless I hold it up. But this is the whole page, you know. I mean, this is this you can really read. This is 4 times in area, twice in width. Okay. Now, still now notice the paragraphs are getting a lot longer. And if you look at the last page, you can probably see much more of the way I constructed this this arrow by cheating. It's not a very good. Now you can see that I should have made them go a little closer together and things like that. But boy, a mathematician would be thrilled to see his mathematics coming out so like this. A printer could never do that for him, really. So okay, now. And so I went all the way and I said magnify 3 times, okay? And so here I was, a small sample. Okay. Okay, yeah, question?
On that previous page, I noticed that the line spacing between 2 of the lines was sort of funny.
Right here.
Page, yes.
Yeah. This is because of this arrow, this QP. There was no room for the arrow over the QP. And so TeX has to leave extra line. If you ever put a math formula in the middle of text that takes extra space, then it has to leave extra space for it in order for not to get written on top of the other one. On the other hand, you might well want to ask the author not to do that because saying you know it's going to look bad. Can't you think of some other way to say that? Or can you display the formula instead? But that's that's why the line spacing came on. In fact, it was true in the original book, as I mentioned the other day. If you look at page 400, there it is. You see these lines here. So the author must have known that it was going to happen. Okay. Now, so my 3 times magnified version here. Notice my displayed formula is still coming out okay. However, I'm getting over full boxes. Now this was done with a center line. A center line doesn't really care if it goes into the left margin a little bit. In fact, even the twice sizes it went over and it didn't complain to me. Didn't get any messages. But on this one, when I said magnify 3000, I was getting over full box. And the first one, it said a little bit too wide. Of course, it's magnified. But this is a line that starts THE. And by the way, this 1 in brackets out here means page 1 has just been completed. And so I know that this overfull box appears on page 1. Or at least near the top of page 2 because it might have processed over. Something starting with the word and an indentation. So it was this very first line here. This is a little bit too wide. Okay. And, okay, now, then I had a few more, and you'll see that some things stick out as we go in here. Coincides, it didn't know how to hyphenate coincides, apparently. Some of the sticking out was in a displayed formula. This one didn't fit. That one's serious. Notice I'm getting various things hyphenated here. Boy, we got to give a hand to the TV operator. I'm causing him fits, but okay. Here's the word length is very hard to hyphenate, and typically the reason is that the reason I'm getting overfull boxes at magnification 3 that I wasn't getting at magnification 2 or any of the lesser ones is that all of a sudden I'm asking these paragraphs to be set to a much narrower measure, it's going to be, especially in mathematical text, it'll be harder to find line breaks. TeX has gone through this whole paragraph and said there's no way to set this paragraph so that you can achieve my tolerances, which were very tight, in that basic sets, and without avoiding an overfull box on the first line and on this line here. So even moving as over here, that would mean putting quite a wide space in the only places where you have room for space, there and there. This was defined to be a quad. I put a quad there, so that wasn't going to grow any. And so I only have 2 places to stretch that space, and if I had to put the word as in there, all the room for the had to be taken up there. That makes those spaces just a little too wide for the tolerance. And there's a way to change the tolerance. And when you're setting to something to a narrow measure, then it's inevitable. Out of every 100 lines, you're gonna have some bad cases that can't be handled without increasing your tolerance. Now, June, question?
For a minute to the coincides that it couldn't hyphenate.
Mm-hmm.
Is there a way to embed your own additional hyphenations, or you just have to sprinkle discretionary hyphens liberally?
Right now, the way to increase the number of words it can hyphenate is to the exception dictionary is built into our pre-processing routine that gets loaded with TeX at the beginning. So we don't have a command that says add this to the exception dictionary for hyphenation. So I think that use the text editor if it's a word that you see a lot that you're using a lot in your text. The fact that TeX is able to on technical papers that it's able to solve this problem with very tight restrictions because it takes a paragraph at a time means that you don't need to hyphenate very many words, except that and so the number of times you're putting in discretionary hyphens turns out to be a small amount of work compared to what you're already doing for proofreading anyway. So we felt that getting the hyphenation down into the noise level, that person isn't really spending very much of his own time putting in these extra hyphens compared to what's proofreading anyway, it was fine for technical work. On the other hand, if we were doing newspapers, we would either have to increase the tolerance, which they always do anyway, and then we would also want a more powerful hyphenation mechanism in TeX than it has now. But the fact that it optimizes a paragraph as a whole means that you can usually find a way to do it without any hyphens, and still having all the spaces quite nice. Okay. Now, so what I would go through now this first line here, the question is what to do, and in this case I'm saying the measure is narrower, so I would increase my tolerance. And the TeX manual talks about that, called JPAR. I think we won't have time to discuss JPAR completely today, but I'll talk more about it tomorrow. And if I said JPAR equals 25, that would probably give me plenty of tolerance for this example, but I didn't check it this morning. I should do so, and tomorrow I'll tell you how high I had to set JPAR before we were able to find good solutions to the particular tolerance. Now, the higher JPAR is, the more the spaces are allowed to stretch. This depends. The designer of the font has told TeX how much spacing is desirable, and for example, the normal thing for BASIC is to allow spaces that are between 4 units minimum, 6 units normal, and about 9.1 units maximum. Now, most printers actually say that they try to live between 4 and 9 units maximum, but the counts of the best printers say that actually about 2 lines out of every 1,000 they go up to 12 units, even in the best printing. And 18 units is 1M. Now, with the fonts that we have, this would be JPAR. If you had 9 exactly, that would be JPAR 1. 9.1 is JPAR of 2. 12 corresponds to JPAR of 8. 15 corresponds to a JPAR of 27, and 18 units corresponds to a JPAR of 64. What happens is, if every time you go up 3 units, this is n cubed here. This is in other words, 6 plus 3 times the cube root of JPAR. For those mathematicians in the audience, is the formula that was actually used here. It's a strange formula, but the main thing is 25 means that you're going to allow a space up to about 15 units, which is fairly wide, not unusual in newspaper. 64 means you're going to allow a space up to a whole quad wide without complaint. And if there's a way to set the paragraph making no spaces less than this tolerance, then it will do so. Otherwise, it'll give you an overfull box. And then it's your job to do some manual correction to say how you would like to handle the situation. And of course, that's what you want, because it's intolerably. There's no tolerable way to do it, so you have to do something. Now, now I set the tolerance quite low in BASIC because I was assuming that people were going to be making technical reports with fairly wide margins that wouldn't be very bad, and that they wanted really high quality looking output documents. And I kept that strict tolerance also throughout my book. Whenever I couldn't solve a problem with that tolerance, and this would occur maybe every 10, 15 pages, well, I would think, I really didn't want to say that sentence quite that way, you know, and I would rewrite it. And the advantage is then that I can know that the book is going to be free of these. Bernard Shaw said that he used to do this to his plays when he would get back from the printer some things where they had terribly wide spaces, and so he would rewrite the thing so that it would look better, and then they wouldn't understand, and they would reset some other lines, and it would get worse. At least it's a little. At least we know now that what technical. So then the question is, if you're going to make some manual corrections, to know what's available. Well, the fact that we have the overfull box gives you some insight as to what the problem is. Namely, I can look at this and I see I can't hyphenate the word length. There isn't a room to fit. But I could look at the word coincide. Where was that? Previous page. And I could see that coincides here. I could see that there would be plenty room to hyphenate the word coincides, and so I can stick in you see, TeX hyphenation rule looks mostly at adjacent letters, and there's words like since that you wouldn't want to hyphenate. So, yeah,
I would think that TeX could hyphenate that, so that the problem might have been it couldn't stretch. There was too much stretch anyway.
Oh, okay.
That's my guess.
Now, this is Frank Lang speaking. He's the author of the hyphenation routine. His thesis is also going to be, and so in fact, that's right. This is the first line of a paragraph, and I put a quad space here, so this isn't allowed to stretch the way I typed that. So it allows only stretching in between those words, and three spaces wouldn't be enough that would exceed that 9-unit tolerance. Because 9 units is very stringent. You won't find any printers who would guarantee you 9-unit spacing, I don't think. Is that right, Arnie? Well,
is it reasonable to take a little space